for the Gathering podcast.
If people can work in a more liberated way, let's just call it liberated.
Okay.
You know, because liberated could mean I come to work at StartWell, but I'm effectively working remotely because I'm not proximate to XYZ person that I do business with in my own company. But I'm in a physical space, I'm interacting with other human beings, and I'm living in a big city. If that actually becomes more of a reality, all of a sudden, a lot of these community problems that exist in these large cities like Toronto should theoretically start to solve themselves. I've been in multiple offices since I've been back in Toronto. Do you know what I see? A bunch of miserable people that are not connecting with each other in any meaningful way whatsoever. And we're like, you'll only hear it from real estate brokers. They're like, people need to get back into the office to connect. And it's like, well, it's not a precursor for connection unless you have a whole bunch of other factors humming and working together, right?
Listen to the people and culture, oh yeah. It's time for the Gathering podcast. It's time for the Gathering podcast.
David Cairns.
Yes.
Welcome back for did we say the third time in this studio?
Yeah, it's the third time, but the second time you didn't air.
There we go.
That was not because of me.
For fans of David Cairns, people have seen this man on our podcast before.
Yeah.
We do have some good stuff in the can that we never aired, but it didn't make it to air because I think it was like we were talking about real estate stuff and it was kind of boring. It's boring.
I agree. It's boring.
And today we're going to talk about something else.
Yeah.
Maybe involving real estate.
Yeah, we can get there, but let's come around, like, you know,
cool.
like the right way. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about this. You used to live in Toronto, the hustle bustle, the big smoke, as people say.
Mm-hmm.
They say it's the big smoke, eh?
It's the big smoke, eh? Yeah.
And then you moved out to Prince Edward Island, a kind of pandemic escape, and then you realized you loved it there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something very interesting to talk about, you know, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're working in some facet of, you know, employment. If you can choose a lifestyle that makes you more comfortable, more happy, gives your family value, you know, I think you're someone who has insight into that firsthand. And I'd like to dig into that and that kind of like remote worker mindset as well, because you know, as a broker, you've been doing deals in Toronto and flying here somewhat often.
Honestly, that's the funny thing. Not that often.
Not that often.
Like, I'm currently doing a deal that's conditional, so it's almost done, with a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company where I have not even actually seen the space that we're negotiating on. Now, I will put some disclaimers.
Like the Church of Scientology.
I'll put some disclaimers around it. The fact that I'm able to do that is predicated on the fact that I lived here and worked here for 8.5 years before I moved. So I know this market very well.
Sure.
But the interesting thing even about a real estate transaction in commercial real estate is that the amount of in-person time required to execute that transaction is probably only about 5%
honestly,
of what is needed. Now, I've been on the amount of emails, the amount of time that I've worked on this deal is long, but it's all digital work. And so what I sometimes say to traditional people is like, you're just choosing to work remotely from a central office. Like, don't delude yourself. Like, and I'll give you a stat behind it. Like,
you mean that person's not connected to their work or the people around them?
No, it's not what I mean. What I mean is that we live in a world where the internet is actually predominantly where work happens.
Okay.
Right? It's not necessarily always where a connection takes place. Like, we're connecting in a way that is challenging to do on the internet. We can do it on the internet, but it's not quite the same, right? But the work.
Yeah. Okay, go for it. Talk.
But the work. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, it's just harder. Like, we can sense each other's presence like a lot more. Yeah. But like,
death to Zoom.
The work happens online, and there's like data to back this up. In medium and large companies, this was a study done by a company called Radical in May of 2023 with 1,000+ enterprise companies with thousands of employees. 81% of their teams do not work co-located with each other, meaning within that organization, they are distributed, right? only 19% of people actually are co-located with the teams that they work with, right? And so it's not really to say that we don't need these hubs to come together, like even if we're traveling from different places or people who are within commuting distance.
Yeah.
But the majority of the work is online. And so if the majority of work is online, it creates this really amazing opportunity. And it's so funny, like we're here really to talk about we're here to talk about the democratized opportunity to design our life.
Okay.
More and more and more people over time, I think, are going to be afforded the opportunity to actually design work around their life, right? Now, I'm on the bit of the bleeding edge of it, and it's not easy. We should also talk about the stuff today that's not easy about it. Because I don't like, what I kind of don't like is like solopreneurship and location independence gets romanticized as this really sexy thing on the internet.
Yeah, amongst 23-year-olds.
Yeah, and it's really hard actually, like in so many ways. So like I actually want to talk about that.
Like there are places where you can't even get soy milk. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? Yeah. But like it's just also like the struggles you have to go through, the compromises you have to make, you know, like the distance from family, like the different job opportunities or not opportunities that are in front of you or whatever, right? But like you have a book sitting in the lobby called The Long Tail by that Clayton Christensen guy, right? Is his name Clayton Christensen? I think his name's Clayton Christensen.
I don't even know.
I believe that's the name. But it's so
I thought that was a Christopher Locke. Maybe he co-wrote that.
I don't know. I mean, we'll have like put it in the show notes or whatever, but
fact check. Look at me. I'm like my mom.
So yeah, look it up while we're talking, but regardless of who authored it, the book, and I'm going to credit this guy, Dror Poleg, as I unravel this thought, but the long tail is a concept that Chris Anderson. Okay. So I screwed that up. I'm glad you clarified.
He used to be the editor-in-chief of Wired Magazine. That's how I knew him. He was the previous guy couple editors ago, but like he was the guy in the golden age of Wired Magazine when they were doing all those lovely like .com boom bust.
Yeah.
And they were doing all those super in-depth kind of editorials that were like, I don't know, taking that kind of like New Yorker approach to editorials, but focusing on tech. And it was like, wow, there's actually humans innovating in technology. And it's not just like bros with pizza and beer, and there's like drama and intrigue, you know?
Yeah.
Back before, that was before Wired got sold. I forget who bought them, and then they got amalgamated and made into this like, you know, what would you call it? Like dentist waiting room mag thing.
So that's the guy who wrote the book?
Yeah.
So tell me if I'm getting this right then, because I may screw this up, but the concept sort of ties into a long tail for creators. Meaning with the modern day internet and notably streaming services, all of a sudden the distribution model for entertainment, be it music or movies or whatever, kind of got flipped on its head, where in a physical store model, you have a scarcity of space to hold the inventory, which means it's way more important for you to nail hits that get sold, because if you have product on the shelf that's, you know, too niche, you're not going to sell it.
Right.
But when you have Spotify, what's actually happened is that the largest songs and the most popular songs in the world actually are even bigger than they've ever been. And it's an and, not a but. There's this long tail for all those niches that were never able to actually get into the store. Right?
It's an interesting way to look at the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, well, it's true, right? Like the cost of having that content goes down, which creates this long tail opportunity, right? Now, we could debate that Spotify in many respects has not been good for creators and blah, 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 but I think we should just park that for a second.
Yeah, that's its own episode right there.
Yeah. So let's park that. But a guy named Dror Poleg, who's sort of like a futurist around like cities and work and stuff like that, has applied that concept to the idea of living.
Okay.
The idea being that as work is more of a how thing than a where thing, it creates this opportunity for a long tail of living. And so in other words, I actually would put myself in that category, because what I've done is not a conventional choice. And I actually think that it will probably look a lot like the music thing, where the largest and most engaging cities in the world, such as New York, hopefully Toronto if it gets out of its own way, blah, 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 become more desirable to live in than ever before, as they reorient more around living and less around working, right?
Yeah.
And then also this long tail of Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island becomes more possible, right? So I kind of think, and I hope actually, that as companies start to wake up to the fact that distributed work basically distributes opportunity, it creates this democratized opportunity for more people to have the option to do what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and it will happen. More and more people will make these unconventional lifestyle choices.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, okay, so some of the lands, it's funny, you always laugh when I say, like, contextualize a discussion by the geography of where we are, right? And I say, okay, well, in Canada or in the States or in America, North America, it's like this, and it's not like that in the rest of the world, and the real world is crying at us, laughing at us. But the thing is, like, I think there is an interesting thing here where in Canada, we've got this two massive employment pools, which are the government, right? 400,000 odd employees across the country, federal right down to municipal level, probably more than that. And then you've got enterprise. You've got these big corporations that includes financial services and insurance and all this stuff. So slow-moving organizations that are, you know, I don't know, overly reliant on this kind of like power dynamics and hierarchies and structures and systems that feel like they've been around for a long time, so it's hard to innovate on. Not that they're not trying. There's a lot of wonderful large corporations that I just know of in Canada, but of course everywhere globally, that are creating incubator programs, accelerator programs that are trying to have intrapreneurship, side hustles that are, you know, sanctioned by their bosses for the employees to kind of innovate on their fifth day or something like that. So I think there's a want to change and a recognition in corporate Canada that corporate evolution must require agility for the workers. The wake-up call may have been the pandemic for sure, with people kind of like embracing the force out of the office. You know, like no one was allowed to come into the office. So people started saying at that point, a lot of people like you were like, well, okay, where if I have the keys to my own destiny now, where should we be? Where can we be? Where would I like to be? And because of the predominance of these two employment classes, I think a lot of people in Canada across the board, the working class, office working class, never thought that they ever had that freedom. They always had the freedom, right? Where the freedom may require you to go and get a different job or get a job from a different country, but domicile here in Canada and do that work remotely. But yeah, I remember talking to people since I moved here in 2005 from New York. And I always told people about the way that I work in the open source community and how in open source software, particularly like, you know, one project that I worked on, which was interesting, was Drupal, which is an open source CMS. You know, the people that built the software, that contributed to the software, were geo-dispersed and had nothing to do with each other, except that they geeked out on that software. And some of them were corporate entities, you know.
Yeah.
And there were people all over the world that contributed to the software, came together online in various ways, right? Through discussion forums, virtual chat sessions, even group calls, way before Zoom was even probably a product. And so it's interesting to see how, you know, with the immediacy of the need to adopt that kind of working reality in the last few years, let's call it within the last 4 years, you know, Canadians kind of said, wow. And this is interesting to me, especially because we do have such a huge country. And this is something I want to ask you about, because like we always, especially like the rest of Canada always says, okay, well, Toronto has his head up his butt because it thinks that it's the center of the universe.
It does. And, you know, people from where I now live will, like, you know, they feel it's us and them, like, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know,
they're us, we're them. Like,
Sure.
we're them. Like, when I go to the fucking airport, I get like put into the reject section at the bottom, and like the coffee shop closes like earlier than other parts of the airport. You know, like
when you fly to Toronto,
when I fly back to PEI, we're like in the
Toronto
we're like
arrivals?
we're like no, like Toronto departures, like we're in the basement. They're like, oh,
from
like,
here,
yeah, they put like Charlottetown, they put like Newfoundland, they put us all in the corner because they don't really give a shit.
That's a weird thing, because I know a lot of people. I've been hearing conversations about that topic for a while, and it's really funny because I like talking about Pearson because it has so much potential but it feels
I didn't mean to derail you. Sorry. I just was like more making the joke that like, yeah, like,
no, like even when we fly to Calgary, whenever we fly to Calgary, it's through the basement.
yeah.
And I always want that might be a WestJet thing though. I don't know.
No, it was Air Canada, but
Oh.
anyway, I want to get you back on your
second class.
yeah, like East Coast is second class or whatever. But
So my point was just that, okay, so we've got this population that's primarily concentrated along the US border and mainly in the densest cities, right? Then you've got all the fringe cities, second and third tier cities.
Yeah.
Cultural issues in Quebec make it a little bit different than the rest of the country. And there is this kind of like old school, back to the 1600s, like farmer culture and farming community culture, which is really cool in Quebec throughout the provinces or the, whatever you call it.
Maritimes. Are you talking
Well,
about?
I was going to say throughout the province of Quebec.
Yeah. And like, yeah, you have, I mean, I don't know a lot about that. I haven't gone Quebec up and I've driven through it obviously on my way to and from Charlottetown and Toronto, but I know a lot about the East Coast mentality. I mean, you'll find that too in PEI and there's like Nova Scotia.
There's almost this different culture of kind of like, you know, I think people going back 300 years maybe, the settlers, you know, at that time, I think there's a culture of taking ownership of what was theirs and that having a legacy until today of like communities sustaining by this sense of responsibility and ownership and belonging.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And, you know, obviously there's people that want to leave that and don't find opportunity within those communities and come to the big cities, right? And there we have this immigration in a city like Toronto. But what I was going to say is that because this country is so big, it's unfortunate that we have less connectivity between all of these communities, you know, the smaller ones and the bigger ones, as well as the bigger ones and the bigger ones. Like, I'm shocked with how many people I meet that have never been to Vancouver. They've never been to Montreal. I keep telling people, jump on a train.
Yeah.
Go for the weekend.
You'll find that in Australia too. Like people, you know, from Sydney and Melbourne have never been to Perth.
Yeah.
I've been to both, and majority of people who live there haven't done it, right? Like it's a massive geographic, like, yeah. So what is your like main question to me?
Well, what I was going to say is like part of this issue is okay, we can easily stack up excuses in Canada for saying that we've never kind of left our town, right?
Yeah.
Because a big landmass and cultural divide and God knows what. But at the same time, there is this kind of status quo, no matter where you are in Canada, of a kind of I don't know. I think it could just be because people are either employed by massive corporations or by government predominantly. There's a status quo kind of assumption of like upward mobility is the way forward in life within your station. Like get a better job, make more money, buy a bigger house, you know, improve your neighborhood. And then if you need to go on a holiday, what do Canadians love doing? Jumping on Sunwing vacations or WestJet vacations or Air Canada vacations. Go to a package vacation in
it's cold.
A sunny destination.
People don't have a ton of money and like, yeah, they want to package up a cheap vacation to somewhere warm.
But I think people park their opportunity in their lives 2 weeks a year. You know, like that's the way they live.
Yeah, you're dead right about that. And I think the interesting thing to me, and I'd love your opinion on it because it's kind of a half-baked thought, but like, you know, looking at PEI for a second, and it's not maybe representative of the rest of the country, but I looked this up recently. Real estate lagged in PEI for a long time, and it started to correct itself in value around 2013. So in the last 9 years, between 2013 to 2023, the median home price on Prince Edward Island, which would include all the rural areas and everything, right?
Yeah.
Went from $150,000 to $300,000. So it increased by 100%.
Right.
Right. The average median household income on the island went from $64,400 to $72,000. So only a 12% increase, right? This is a major divide. Now, we know that this is a major problem globally. It's a major, major problem in North America across the board.
Yep.
And what I think's kind of happening actually is that the generations that have many, many more years left to work in the workforce are realizing that this chasing the top thing is more elusive now than it's actually ever been. And that in order to actually sustain one's life, one needs to find greener pastures elsewhere. That might be
100%.
geographic,
Yeah.
that might be multiple income streams. The volatility of earning a living and finding a way to make it work in a large urban market is really, really difficult. And so I think almost out of necessity, people are reconsidering things, and especially because they've been shown a different thing, like the veil got lifted or whatever in COVID.
Right.
I think now out of that necessity is actually becoming a different ideological mindset that actually isn't directly correlated to the financial pinches that people are thinking. The financial pinches, in other words, are getting people to realize that life is short.
Sure.
And that they don't actually need all those things. There's this great TikTok video by this guy. I wish I could remember who he was.
That's quite the sentence.
Oh, it's so good. He's like,
It's this great TikTok video by this guy who I have no idea who
oh,
is.
it's like so
'Cause it
funny.
only showed it to me for 20 seconds.
Well, I don't even go on TikTok. I saw it on LinkedIn actually. But this guy was basically playing both the manager and the employee
Yeah.
in a performance review.
Okay.
And the guy was sort of like, the manager's like, you're not really giving 100%. And he looks at him and goes, the manager goes, with respect, you're not giving 100%. And the guy goes, with no due respect, no organism on this planet can work at 100% of the time. And he goes on about all these other things about like, if I really look at my financial life, I only get upset when I compare myself to other people. Like I'm doing way better here in North America with my, whatever my modest sense of living is, than anyone else in the world. And the only time I get mad is when I look at people driving a electric Porsche down the street, right? Which, by the way, in PEI, you don't really see that. Like I've seen all these fancy cars here and stuff, and all this excess, right?
Yeah.
That I don't see in my day-to-day life out there. And actually, it rests your nervous system in a lot of ways, right? To just not see it in your face all the time.
Yeah, I don't even notice that stuff. I have no perception of status by commodified, consumption. To me, but that's because I have grown up in Africa and stuff.
Well,
so
yeah, you grow up in all these different places. But just to close this point,
Sure.
I effectively what I'm saying is that the financial pinch that this world is experiencing right now, that does not look like how the boomers evolved, is actually forcing a different mindset. That's my theory.
No, I think that makes sense. And I think especially amongst the people that feel like they have the means to take their destiny into their own hands, right? So like I'm very faithful that people in their 20s and 30s, kind of like pre-family mode, people in Canada, are going to be in the next 5 years, let's say, taking a leap that's entrepreneurial, or like you were saying, moving to tertiary cities, maybe leaving the country, changing careers, shifting up what was that kind of very like Anglo 1950s expectation of like getting a badge on your 50th celebration of being at the company.
Yeah. Well, good luck getting there, right? Like just look at the S&P 500 from 1950 to today. The average lifespan of companies is just massively shrinking. They're not even living the life of a 50-year career.
Well, like this is
I'm being a bit dramatic, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, but it's true. It's true. Like something I keep seeing from the client reality, right, is that no matter how big the company is, the efficacy, I should say the decision-making capability within organizations is becoming poorer as the business climate becomes more aggressive. And there's this kind of leadership crisis in corporate Canada, which I've been kind of noticing here and there, where no matter what the size of your organization is, leaders haven't necessarily grown up in discomfort in Canada, in the business community, and especially in enterprise. So they don't know how to make tough decisions quickly that impact, multiple bottom lines. So it's kind of like it's gotten a little crazy where B2B business even that's always been kind of pretty solid, especially large ones, are questioning their economics, but they don't know how to answer it, and employees don't know, necessarily how they can contribute. And that's an interesting point where like people are like, we keep hearing from, on the Gathering, StartWell's other podcast, on the Gathering podcast, we keep hearing from people saying teams want, in a lot of cases, people in culture and HR managers are speaking with their their teams, and people are like, we don't have enough information to contribute, especially in large enterprise. They're like, we're so far from the CFO's office. We want to do some cool stuff for this company, but we don't know if we can spend, or we don't know if we need someone on our team to help us with this project. We don't know if we'll ever be able to hire that person.
Well, so it's interesting that you say all this, actually, because I think we can now move maybe a little bit into this whole real estate conundrum. But you bring up this really interesting point, which is basically proximity to power, right?
Okay.
Like I spoke to a guy in the U.S. government on the real estate side who basically told me that the hierarchy of all these different services within the U.S. government got completely flattened through remote work happening in the pandemic. For the simple answer is that if you wanted to get a top government job, you had to go to DC. You had to build your career to the point of physically relocating to the power. Right? But then once the pandemic happened, all of a sudden, this more equitable, this more inclusive opportunity came about accidentally for people to be able to voice what they have to say, right? Or what they need. And I think your comment around not knowing how to contribute speaks to the fact that how we work is broken. It's not where we do it. It's actually the how part. It's creating transparency and single sources of truth within the organization for people to be able to go and know what is going on. What are the priorities of the business?
Priorities, what are the rules? Like what are the who can I talk to about what? It's so funny. There are so many companies where people can't and don't and thus assumptively can't walk down the halls to a different office. Like I'm saying, let's say they work in the office, okay? They're not like, because that's a whole nother issue. As things have gone remote, there's a digital divide, and not just about knowledge gaps, but about.
Well, it goes to the how, because they're just applying like an office way of working to the internet, and that's never going to work.
But it's also like in the quote unquote, in the Capitol Hill office, you could walk down the hall or go to, what's on floor 16? You've never been there. Walk around and be like, hey, Jim, I'm Judy from the 4th floor.
Like, what do you do?
and that doesn't kind of happen, in like big enterprise kind of corporate reality.
No.
But digitally now, you'll be locked out of access to that person because of the system architecture. So there's a whole nother cultural implication of digital work, which is, systems design around collaboration and how do you program for innovation, and not just performance as KPI based, grunt work.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. That's a whole rabbit hole, and it's definitely something that we've been lining up on the Gathering podcast to have like a roundtable about. Is like it came up in a recent episode where like, what's the digital OS that remote first teams are using to enable social.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up because there's a company that I've gotten in like a loose understanding of lately called Roam. And they are a virtual workplace. So there's obviously the metaverse, which I have some semblance of involvement in. But for
our listeners who may not know, we did a little video that's kind of fun. We'll link to it, where we had David at our event studio on Niagara Street, strapped into this crazy like rig and walking around through the metaverse, conducting
a roundtable discussion.
Yeah. And it looks pretty cool. And we had a chat after that session about what it meant to him and how the experience was. So follow up on that.
It was epic. And I really appreciate that you did that for me, because it actually gave me the ability to legitimize what I was doing and make it more understandable to people. It's helped me get further guests and all kinds of things. So
the power of video, right?
Yeah, no, video is massively powerful. And it's another reason why I'm back here with you. And I really appreciate that we can do this because it's like this medium to get the word out is more important than it's ever been in this world of AI and people not really hanging out and being together in person that much. But to get back to it, because you're talking about what is the OS for...
Yeah, you were saying Roam.
Yeah, Roam. But so let's just, for a second, the metaverse part, I think it's really, really great for immersive gatherings because it gives this sense of being actually together like we are right now.
Yeah.
That's very, very difficult to do in a fully two-dimensional, more zoomy kind of
You need the
capacity.
third dimension.
You need to be able to sit down in the seat. You need to be able to like wave. You need to be able to shake hands, emote. Of course, it's video gamey, but you're actually able to be more expressive with one another about how you're feeling about the interaction, the conversation, than you can like on Zoom. But I don't believe that that's going to become the virtual office anytime soon.
Right.
Because it's just like too clunky. It's like it requires too much compute power. You have to download the software. If you stream it through the internet, the user experience goes way down. Like there's just a lot of hurdles for the metaverse as it's defined to be that. But Roam is this interesting platform. I'll try my best to explain it because I've actually been inside of it. But effectively what it is a two-dimensional office where on the right-hand side of the screen that you load up is actually the floors of this office. They don't make it look like a building, but they're like marketing is here and sales is here and whatever is there, right? And you can actually like move to that floor. People are going in there to actually work. And I think one of the main things that they're trying to solve for is these like burst communications that people want to be able to have, right? Because it's like everything on Zoom becomes a structured 30-minute or 60-minute meeting, and you fill that time whether you need it or you don't need it, right? Whereas this is one of those things where like you can have your own little virtual office with like a circle avatar of you. You can even actually have artifacts of who you are, like memorabilia, pictures of your family.
Your cubicle.
Your virtual cubicle. So when someone comes in, they actually get to like experience what are those things for you.
Yeah.
And there's that element of like, I'm on do not disturb right now, don't come in, or I'm open, feel free to knock, blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually quickly move into different meeting rooms. They've got a town hall space where all of a sudden you can actually be presenting and listen to this functionality. This was actually the coolest functionality I found from it. They have this like town hall space that's sort of set up like Massey Hall or whatever, right? Like where there's, how would you describe that?
Like an auditorium.
That's like an auditorium or whatever, the way it's set up. And they've got these little like benches or whatever that you can sit in. So you could go and like sit with your colleagues that you want to, and they give you the ability to actually whisper to each other while the other person is talking, just like you might if you were in a movie or if you were in a show, right? So you can kind of have your little private chats without disturbing other people that are listening to the thing.
Yeah.
And then they've got like a backstage thing where like they can talk to people backstage, they can bring you on, like, you know, like all that kind of capability within one virtual platform. So like, I think it's pretty cool, actually.
That's so interesting because even that what you described about the auditorium functionality, that's something that we were beta testing in the pandemic as I was thinking through like the hybrid events. What are hybrid events going to be? And there's a Toronto-based company that we played with their tech, and it was exactly that. And the whole thing was like, it's very natural to walk into a bar and your, auditory system changes as you sit at a table because you can hear the background noise, but it's muted in your brain.
Yeah.
Right? We're just talking at this table.
Yeah.
So that's what they had been playing with.
Who will win in that category? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and also this is now going back to the economic, context thing. Who needs to win and what is winning? And I really think that this is something that we're going to see more of, and I'm hopeful for it in the next decade, is far less energy and capital going into moonshot unicorn companies that are pump and dump schemes to rob the public coffers, in a way. And hopefully, at least in Canada, more bootstrapped approaches to financial sustainability within small and medium-sized business.
Yeah, that movement's already happening.
Yeah.
But to go, so you're dead right about all that. But the other thing is that this is a massive change in behavior as well, right? Like to actually work in Rome.
Sure.
Right, the platform Rome, not the place Italy, but
to work in Rome.
Work in Rome. Well, funny enough, like maybe in theory, working on Rome lets you be in Rome more. Like who knows? But to work within that platform, your cadence for how you work has to be that when I start working, I load up Rome and I work from Rome, right? And I think that's a major shift. And I think the one drawback, and they've been challenged, the company. It's so funny. The guy's name's Howard Lerman. He's a cool guy. I've never spoken to him live, but I've spoken to some other people in his company. But the one thing that they get sort of like knocked for is, will this create the same presentee problem and the stress that's associated over being watched? Like, like the expectation is that when you start working, you load up Rome, like, will that just become the same problem that we faced in the office, but just in a virtual world?
And maybe, you know what?
That's a problem of culture, I think. Like,
Yeah, of course it is. And I think there's a lot of bullshit that people kind of lie to themselves and each other about. They work in jobs that they hate. They work for companies which they don't like. They have no emotional connection to the output of their labor. They spend so much time doing it. They don't look for solutions to change their lifestyle because it's hard, it's difficult, and it requires discomfort. It requires saying, I need to earn my living somehow else. How do I do it? Where do I do it? How do I present myself? Like, if you've been in a job for 10 years and you want to make a change.
Dude, I'm going through all of it right
Yeah, it's
now.
difficult,
It's really difficult. And
But
I threw myself into it, like head first, like where I ended up being forced to solve some of the problems that you're mentioning without actually thinking about them before I made that choice.
So tell me about your personal journey on that. How have you dealt with the personal pain of, if nothing else, just getting through your brain, shedding your comfort zones?
Yeah. Well, it's a process of individuation, not individualism, because that can be kind of toxic where you're like, you separate yourself from other people. Like, it's more like I had to say goodbye to everyone I knew, every place I knew, still work for the same company, but do it remotely in an industry that is, somewhat resistant to remote work, although that's changing, which is good. I had to let it all go. And when I first got to my new destination, I had this massive sense of relief.
Yeah, it must feel great. I miss that feeling. I wanna pick up in a new location every month.
It was incredible. And especially to go to a place like that, right? Where like you're, like I was like sitting on the water, like in a small town of like, 50 or 60,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it was this massive sense of relief. But then that classic saying, wherever you go, there you are,
Right.
reemerges.
Okay.
Right. And what I've realized is that there's been three things that have been going on for me. I have been shedding ego.
Mm-hmm.
I have been expanding as a person.
Okay.
And I've been ultimately returning to previous versions of myself, notably like my more childlike self.
Cool.
Which only really comes you have to be willing to do the work, and it's challenging.
Yeah.
Only really comes if you can separate yourself from all those people and all those places, because otherwise you have these notions of who you are that are tied to how other people perceive you.
Yeah,
and it's hard for you to figure out who are you when you have all of that going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Recontextualizing yourself. Also in a culture that predominantly, like here in Toronto, work-life culture is very much work first, and you are you are what you do.
Totally. That doesn't come up where I live at all. No one asks you what you do. Nobody cares. Nobody, like I'm like mini social media influencer in the consideration of the real estate or future of work conversation. Not a single solitary person where I live knows or cares.
Right.
Like actually a few of my friends know now, but like
you're an influencer?
Yeah, but
that you get invited to events to like hand out candy bars?
Yeah, it has no bearing on our relationship whatsoever.
Yeah, like it's kind of cool, right? And this is a very interesting, I think, spin on this take, which is I have always, until StartWell, which is a physical business with an objective brand, somewhat, and people can walk in the building and touch and feel what I've built, right?
Yeah.
I've always, for the most part, been working in media and digital media, particularly. Like, so I had record labels, right? I had a film distribution company, and that distribution company was digital. So we were Netflix for India in, all over the world. But before Netflix was in India, like I was licensing films and streaming them.
Mm-hmm.
So in working in digital for so many years, like I'm talking since I was my first gigs were digital, like when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So let's call that 30 years, working in digital. It has always been difficult to articulate what I do, let alone what I'm interested in, because how do you articulate that to people who don't necessarily live the same digital reality as you? Now, I do wonder about this in the hybrid story, right? And as things become more digital for work, for other people and people working in very conventional industries as they're out of the office. Granted, now there is a counterbalance that I already am thinking of here. You might say it. It wasn't different in an office. To articulate out of the office with people that you didn't work with what you do every day.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
you mean like explaining to the people that you know in your personal life, what do I do at the office?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
You're at the pub on a Friday. I don't know.
Well, yeah. And usually people get pretty exhausted by those conversations, right? They don't want to try to explain to somebody what they do. They actually just want to get to know the other person and figure out actually all that other stuff.
Yeah.
What do you value as a human being, right? What interests you? What lights you up? What are your thoughts on the fact that we're hurling around the sun and none of us really know what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Like all that matters more.
Yeah.
Then that's real connection, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. And I've been on this crazy adventure, right? My whole career, my whole life is always about trying to use business to kind of articulate my passions and provide vehicles for expression and creativity and introspection, but also, innovation. So it's kind of, I look at business as art, in many ways.
Yeah, I hear
There's
you.
a side to that.
Yeah.
Hopefully more people can do that with work, but it's very interesting because the majority of people, of course, can't.
Well, to go back to what you said, right? You're like, it's work first, it's life second. You're totally right. Like
Yeah.
I got it. I'm staying at the Royal York Hotel,
Yeah.
sitting there having my breakfast by myself. And what do I hear beside me? KPI, let me call my guy, like all this stuff. Like I don't hear shit like that on PEI, right?
Sure.
This is not the way people talk or interact. And so what I was going to say is that this thing that's been really cool for me about moving, I've had this amazing opportunity, not just to work predominantly remotely, but to work flexibly with my time.
Yeah.
And by having time flexibility, I linger around all these places in my community. I spend more time talking to the guy who runs the pet shop. He's now my friend. I spend more time talking to the servers in the coffee shops, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them have become my friends.
Right.
So I've had this weirdly amazing experience of shedding those socioeconomic divides
Yeah.
that tend to exist in large cities because people just stay in their lane. Whereas where I live, everyone's just coexisting together, right? And that's actually why what you do doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Where I am, right? So if people can work in a more liberated way, let's just call it liberated,
Okay.
because liberated could mean I come to work at StartWell, but I'm effectively working remotely because I'm not proximate to XYZ person that I do business with in my own company, right? But I'm in a physical space, I'm interacting with other human beings, and I'm living in a big city. If that actually becomes more of a reality, all of a sudden, a lot of these community problems that exist in these large cities like Toronto should theoretically start to solve themselves. Because people, like we talk about the loneliness epidemic, right? And a lot of people love to weaponize that and say that it's because we're not in the office. I've been in multiple offices since I've been back in Toronto. Do you know what I see?
Yeah, but most offices suck, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A bunch of miserable people
Yeah.
that are not connecting with each other in any meaningful way whatsoever, right? And we're like, you'll only hear it from real estate brokers. They're like, people need to get back into the office to connect. And it's like, well, it's not
That's
a precursor for connection unless you have a whole bunch of other factors humming and working together, right? And for a lot of people, going back to your comment around, what interests me, how I'm this complex person, which by the way, so is everyone else. How do I find a way to be able to express myself and connect with other people that share my values or that are complementary to me? That goes so far beyond work and what work could ever do to fill up what we need in our cups, right? Then it just makes no sense to try to reduce it down to like we have a work problem that we need to rethink the whole notion. And that goes back to time flexibility. The more time flexibility humans have, the more they will themselves solve their own relational problems. They will do it because we are a relational species. When I came in here, I grabbed your, bicep and fucking shook you and like we connect. That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's just what we do. We're not going to stop doing it.
Yeah.
We just don't want to have to do it in this binary way.
Yeah, it's so true. And like, look, I also, my perspective on things is colored because I've built this environment for people to be able to be themselves, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
hope here at StartWell.
That's why I like
Always.
coming here.
Yeah.
Like,
And we see it every day with meetings, right? So now it's actually like, it was interesting for those, like that little gray area. I would say last year was the transition out of the pandemic year, as people got more comfortable in physicality, and coming together for the often cases last year. It was the first time teams
Yeah.
coming here for the first time. They're getting, not just getting, Judy got out of the house for the first time, drove down from Vaughan, but like, which is a suburb for our non-Torontonians, listening. But basically, people coming together for the first time sometimes as teams because there was so much churn through the pandemic in staff ranks, that, you know, like Judy might have worked at 3 other companies before this company. Now they come to StartWell for their first team session offsite. They're here for a day or a couple of days and they're vibing because the context enables them to feel comfortable and they're happy to be together. Now that whole context thing, we've talked about it before, is not in every workplace. And
No.
it could be like for all the people waving the flags and go back to the office. I mean, there's different kinds of offices and different kinds of organizations, right? So if you're like a financial organization and you have it's the post-industrial, you know, factory in the sense that everyone's work, there's enough work to fill the day and that work is very functional work. Okay, fine. Get in the office that you can be managed, but you're going to get your $1 million bonus and maybe that's worth the toil. All right. That's up to each organization to determine the culture. I don't believe that every company should have the same company I would, or same culture that I would, you know, ascribe to my brand, and what my staff should enjoy. So that's okay. But on the flip, for the companies, and we do talk to them, you know, through the Gathering podcast, a lot of people within organization that are trying to create experiences for their teams, what they're finding for the last couple of years, they've been really trying as hard as they can personally to motivate people to come together using the office, depending on what the budget looked like, to become a fun house of sorts, a learning center of other sorts, an experience center, an innovation center for their products. Lots of different ways to try and motivate people to kind of like do things together in physical space. And I think this is really interesting is I don't think, like, it's kind of a new term even that companies are using, people and culture, right? That was HR 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I think that whole transition is just in the earliest of beginnings where organizations are hopefully going to start adopting this idea of hiring people leaders whose role it is to encourage and coach people to be social creatures within work.
Yeah,
Right, like-
I'm with you. And like,
So the nature of the office is being the place where they could do their work to bring people together. Like that's so like we've pressed reset in many ways in North America.
yeah.
And the potentiality of that, I don't think people even conceive. I think what an office could be.
Well, it's in its total infancy still, like
Yeah.
complete infancy. Because and the more distributed work becomes, which is happening, it's a snowball that is like rolling down the hill. The more it happens,
Yeah.
the more these cultural hubs, and frankly, a StartWell really could be actually one of those cultural hubs because it's like a neutral ground in a lot of ways, which actually matters. That's why there's public libraries. That's why there's
corporate politics are not part of
you enter into a space that feels neutral from some of the stuff, like the cultural stuff, right? Like that's why there are public domain spaces within communities for people to come together that actually come from different backgrounds, right? When you enter a library, you're getting a full cross section of that community, which has different socioeconomic characteristics, right? So, but anyway, I'm pumping StartWell because I believe in it, as you know.
Yeah.
But if we just look at the data, so I'm going to peel back some layers on an Atlassian study. They're an incredible company that really...
The guys who make Jira, right?
Yep. And they just bought Loom, and they're a software company that obviously has a horse in the race for distributed work, you know, reaching scale. But I think that the way that they are going about basically banging the drum is incredible. So they went distributed 1,000 days ago, just over 1,000 days ago, and they recently released a report called 1,000 days going distributed or whatever it is. So, and it's incredible. But like, let me give you some stats. Okay.
Yeah.
In fiscal year 2020,
Yep.
they hired 14% of their new hires were remote. And how they define remote is 2 hours or more from
In office.
from an office. They have 12 of them globally. Okay. I think they're like 11 or 12,000 employees. 12 offices, whatever. If you're more than 2 hours, you're a remote hire, right? So 14%. In 2023, end of fiscal, that hiring jumped to 57%. So they 4x'd their remote hiring efforts. Okay. Another interesting stat. 23. So of the people that live within a commutable distance to one of their offices, they're fully choice led. They do not have any form of mandate. 23%, only 23%, come into that office on one time or more a week. Now, I don't say only to be negative. It's just that clearly we're witnessing a moment where offices are needed for people to actually get their work done, not just to come together to break bread and build rapport.
Sure.
Some people actually need that office to work for a myriad of reasons. But the amount of people that need it to work is actually very low in the knowledge economy, right? Okay. So what
You're saying knowledge economy to be
it's an annoying
white collar
term.
people?
Yeah, whatever. White collar. Desk workers. Desk workers. People that type away on computers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So of those people, work is increasingly distributed. And now a company like Atlassian is sort of a blue flamer and on the, they're at the bleeding edge of the change, right? They're not representative of the average.
They're not IBM.
No, but fuck IBM. But if you play that tape forward another 10 or 15 years, you're gonna witness all of the socioeconomic forces that are changing things, right?
Yeah.
The S&P index has a shorter lifespan, so some of the legacy companies will die. A lot of new ones will be born through a distributed way of thinking and then behaving, right? So what I'll find really interesting to see is how will Atlassian redefine their physical workplace strategy,
Right, yeah.
to be more reflective of this distributed workforce. Because take me, I'm a perfect example. If I worked at Atlassian, I need co-working space. My wife just said to me this morning, she's like, we need to spend less time together.
Yeah. Get out of the house, David.
Right? So like I need co-working space, but there's not a WeWork in Charlottetown.
Yeah.
So if you only
we work anywhere.
if you only, there might be WeWork.
Something to talk about.
Oh yeah, there might be WeWork nowhere, but let's just pretend they exist for a minute. If you only use all access with WeWork, that forces all your staff to choose between coming into a financial district or not coming in at all, right? But if you leverage a platform such as Dasana to empower people to be able to access all of the third-party co-working space, now all of a sudden, I'm working at the co-working space in Charlottetown with a click of a button, right? Like that needs to happen. And then as and when that does happen, the need for these like cultural hubs becomes even more important.
Mm-hmm.
It's even more important because people are going to meet with each other with intention far less frequently than they ever have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally, man. No, totally. I think in the next decade we're going to see a greater wealth of different types of second and third space for people to, do work and meet and socialize. And that's really exciting. I don't know if they'll get like channeled and typified, and there'll be a lot of gray area between like social club, co-working, and maybe hopefully even from the public sector, libraries evolving a little bit to support these sorts of work functions, not just being crappy tables in the corner with like, I don't know, IBM XTs, But there will be a lot of that kind of like evolution all over the place. I'll tell you this, something that we've been seeing, of course, post-pandemic, we've pretty much killed office space at StartWell, right? So it's like only on-demand meeting space and event space for companies. And then, as you know, media services and like our turnkey video production. So just like this studio, we built out at our event studio, like literally wire drilled into the wall cameras, because it comes back to this thing. I think we might be ahead of the curve in many ways. We're pushing the agenda with a lot of corporate clients. But you mentioned creators.
Dude, I'm going to jump in because like I am a creator, as you know, and half the reason I'm here.
What does that mean to you, by the way?
I put my own original art and ideas into the world. that's what I do.
Yeah.
Right. That's a creator to me.
Okay.
And actually I had this like thought, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, I'm like, I am putting art into the world, and I've yet to figure out the perfect methods to actually monetize a lot of that art.
Yeah. No problem.
Right? It's challenging. It's challenging. But nonetheless, I have a passion for doing it. And so I'm going to keep doing it. And the ability to earn money from that is becoming more possible, not less possible.
Right.
But to your point, like, I wish I had the ability to actually leverage more of these spaces in places that I go, notably within my own community. I mean, there's nothing like this in my own community, but also the buy-in and the support of my company to go create in these places, right? Because like, I've built, like, you can build your own brand, you can do your own thing with like nothing. You can do it with a phone, and like, I'm not here to say that you need perfect stuff
studios
to do it, but like, when you get to a certain point, such as like where I'm at with building my brand, I actually really want to level up the quality of what I put out, and that requires production value, right? Like, there's a symbiotic benefit here to us having this conversation, but you're giving me like huge value by literally giving me a platform to put my ideas out. You're going to be able to edit this. You're going to be able to give me some clips. Well, you're going to give me massive value, and companies should be giving that value to their employees.
It's interesting because we're in discussions with a bunch of different companies that want us to, they've seen and used our studios, and they want us to build studios for their companies. And it's very interesting because what we keep coming up with is, it's not just about the difficulties that we have to endure to train their staff to run studios if they're going to internalize studio function, but it's the larger question of how do you develop a culture of participatory creation in an organization. That alone is like a massive consultancy agreement that most people don't want to sign on to. So we've been pulling back from that service offering. Now these are like big multinationals for the most part, but that's where we're centralized here, and we're saying, oh, come here and use the studios, because then it's like purposeful, you know? Not everyone can jump into the next door room and be like, let's make something. You know? And it's very difficult to train people on how to do that. So that's also where, like, here, of course, because like we have producers and we have everything turnkey, it's easy for us to lead people into the studio to create content. But we do see a lot of apprehension. And then as soon as people experience this like service-led approach to studio, and that it's easy, it's as easy as jumping in the room and opening your mouth.
Well, and I mean, you know, the funny thing is it actually starts more with letting people know it's actually safe to create.
Yeah. Well, that's a big thing.
That's a whole, we could do another hour on that, but like,
well, especially within large corporate organisms where you've got PR, comms teams, there's legal watchdogs.
I've just had to go out into the unknown myself and do it. And what I actually want to say, and like, I hope this actually makes it onto the internet, is I have a massive amount of privilege to endure the pain of putting my art and thoughts into the world working for a large company. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm a white guy, literally. Like many people within large organizations wouldn't even bother attempting to exercise their voice for the fact that they know that they would be shut down or have repercussions that would be too damaging to their welfare to do it in the first place.
Well said. No, it's absolutely correct. From my vantage, I definitely concur. We see it and hear it. I've definitely seen it, even with some of the interviews that we had to like leave on the cutting room floor for this podcast series alone. Like, there are episodes where people have been muzzled, you know, by the internal teams, comms teams, legal, whatever. And that's also not just because of, ethnic diversity or something.
Well, you can't design your policies for the people that are either going to steal company time, right? Which is this whole idea of like, you must be in the office so people can watch you because people will steal your time. It's like, well, no, people stole your time in the office also, by the way. Okay. The people that aren't engaged are either not engaged because they're unengaged as people, or you're doing something wrong to not engage them. So like, don't pretend that because you can't see them, like that you solve the problem by them coming in. And the same thing is true here with expressing a person's voice out into the world. There will be some people that may degrade your company intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a very, very, very small percentage of people. Most people are trying to do right by themselves and the people that they work for because they're good people.
Most exactly. And I think that faith is something that's difficult to canonize, systematize, celebrate as culture within an organization. So most organizations fall back on like rules and regulations and like slapping hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see it in startup culture where people are so empowered to kind of like wear many hats, represent the company, and we don't know who we are yet. So it's easy to like give out that responsibility.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be an idealist. Like I get that it's hard, but it's also really important to be honest about what is behind it and try to make the incremental change.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I like this though. I think it sounds like from your perspective, combining a want for change in one's own life, you're suggesting that people will have to, endure hardship, but to realize a greater sense of self and calm, and the potentiality of that can actually propel them to have a voice in the world, which they might be living without, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Feels more succinct than what I said. But I mean, like...
See, all I do is I summarize what people say. That's my
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really important job of an interviewer. But I mean, I think that we're on the precipice here of a possibility for more and more people to be able to choose how they live. And that's a good thing. But it's still going to take like a lot of time. And I guess what I would say, because it sounds like we're kind of wrapping up here, that's how it feels, is the more people that are willing to step out into the unknown and whatever that means for them, because it's going to be different for every person, right?
Yeah.
The more people that are like put their neck on the line, do that and document it in some way,
Mm-hmm.
the more it will equalize the ability for other people to do the same thing.
Yeah, this is the thing. There needs to be a kind of adoption of change in this. I don't like using status quo, but like, yeah, like as things become more mainstream, funnily enough, definitely in North America, as soon as something's mainstream, it's like totally allowable, Ridiculous stuff's gone on in the pop mainstream and media culture in the last 10 years. And somehow it's totally cool. Like everything from artist right infringement to whatever, like even great, like things, let's talk about brands, okay? Like the fact that Uber, right, was like a legal thing. Was like,
illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, illegal. Yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that it could be considered legal. There was legal battles in the background, right? But the customer, as soon as they saw brand equity, or rather they saw a huge brand and the brand developed equity through the relationships of its passengers and so on, then there was no question amongst the customers of, am I doing something illegal by getting into this random car?
Yeah.
Oh, there's an app. I use it all the time. Everyone uses it. It must be platform layer in society, So these things can definitely have momentum once they reach ubiquity. And I think workplace culture's evolution definitely is part of that. I think I agree with you. It's going through that right now, this change.
Yeah, and I don't want to generalize too much, but I really think that it rests on the shoulders of millennials and Gen Xers to actually like put their money where their mouth is and lead differently.
Right.
Show that it's okay to be different so that people that are younger coming up can actually recognize there is an opportunity to shake this shit up. Like
totally, man.
It does not need to be the way that it was. Like, and then like, cause a lot of them are like, when you're young, you're lost. Where do I work? Tell me what to do. I need help. Like, right. And the idea that help has to come through physically sitting beside the same people all day at the expense of everything else is a lie that is being sold for many people's profit. And like, we have to show a different path, make hard decisions, move to fucking PEI and talk about it. Not because I'm telling everyone else they should do that,
right?
But for them to be able to find their own story in me, right? Like, because I'm just some guy, but like, I may get you thinking about yourself.
So you guys totally happy where you're living? Like, or is this going to be is there going to be another move?
No, it's not another move. Well, there's a move within a move. The one thing that we've realized is that we're kind of in no man's land, living between the North Shore where we have a cottage that we rent. Anyone listening, I'd love to talk to you about renting it. But we have that cottage out in the beautiful middle of nowhere. And then we've got this amazing property. That's probably, it's kind of comical because it's like less than a 10-minute drive to Main Street, but like everything is relative on a smaller place, right? We sort of feel like we're in no man's land out there.
You're by yourselves. Once you turn off the lights at night, you don't hear anyone.
Yeah, like we have like a suburban neighborhood. It's sort of like an Oakville kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
But across the street from us is like the Walmart and like the Home Depot, and like you're kind of like, it's like a bizarre not junction.
Sure.
You know? So what we want to do actually is move closer to the one high street that we have, live in a smaller environment, downsize the amount of space we have, because we've found out that like owning a lot of land and a big property, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't want the financial strain of it either. So we're going to relocate to be walkable to High Street, because that is actually the only thing that we miss about big city life is walkability to the shit that we like to do.
Yeah.
So it's a move within a move.
Nice.
But not a move away.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man.
Yeah.
See, meanwhile, I could never afford to move. In Toronto, we're stuck in our house forever. We keep dreaming up of like ways to like change our house over time. Because if we sell it, we can't get anything bigger.
Well, that's the problem, right? You have to move somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're priced out of the city, you know?
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. You'll have to ask yourself. It's all trade-offs, right? Everything is a trade-off. Do you value the trade-offs or not?
But I agree with this. I think I'm definitely more. I'm experiencing more conversations with people talking about lifestyle, talking about work lifestyle, talking about making a better one for people that belong to their companies, but also the flip. People saying, "I don't want to be an entrepreneur." Like that's the other thing, right? So
many people don't. Yeah, no.
It's hell, man. Let me tell you, it's a pain in the ass. Like I don't know anymore what it feels like to have the comfort of a week.
Yeah.
You know, like a week. What is a week? I don't know. I have a day every day. I have a day. And the day always ends with not quite like I'm stressed. It's not like, oh, I didn't finish everything I needed to do. But my days end with the knowledge that I have to motivate myself to look forward to the next day, which is great. Everyone should live life that way, right? But at the same time, it's crazy. Like I can't even remember the last time I had like a week that had a start and an end, and I didn't need like success or no success. I didn't need to achieve something.
Yeah, well, the thought you're making me think is what a world it would be if the average person had the chance to hop between whatever job they needed to hop between, because life changes and companies go in and out of business. But like, if the average employer had the ethos of giving people that time and location flexibility to the maximum extent possible as being something that was average, not rare, then people could actually benefit from, the things that are afforded to entrepreneurs, but without the same level of risk.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I think, what most people want. And it's attainable. It's an attainable thing.
If people are caught in the rat race trying to buy freedom, and the freedom is like all they want is that extra half hour a day or an hour a day to read a book, like absolutely. If you have no commute, and you have that hour, at the same time, if you can finish your work early, and that's fine. Yeah. And you can work 2 hours a day in a job.
Some people are going to be able to do that. Absolutely. And they don't want more upside.
Yeah.
So why is that a problem?
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
I think to anyone listening to this who's crafting a culture for their company, whether it's an existing, age-old company or something from scratch, there's greater potentiality than ever before to afford people freedom, whilst also, if you're conscious of it, paying attention to how people are applying themselves well to affect whatever success means for your company. Like that takes cognizance and it takes planning. And I think that the tools are there now for people to be able to do that, so everyone can work together in better ways.
I think we need a bigger stage. This was a good chat.
This is a good chat, right?
Yeah.
Well, our stage is the internet. So for anyone listening or watching, if you enjoyed this episode, we'll include some contacts in the footnotes, and definitely reach out to us if you want to hear more.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me to talk about this. I appreciate it.
Sure, man.
Yeah.